All right, looks like we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I know that our guest speaker is going to drop a lot of knowledge. She's calling from LA. We've got some more folks who are writing in the chat box joining from LA. We've got Northern Virginia representing, New York City, Poland representing. We've got New Jersey, a New Jersey native. Oh, that's our guest speaker writing there. Okay, so she's currently in Los Angeles, but originally from New Jersey. I didn't know that, so that's new information for me. I am originally from LA, but calling from Patagonia in Argentina today. So just want to take some time to thank everyone for joining us live here. If you're rewatching this, thank you for being intentional and taking time to share with us today. Participation is key. I like to kick off these conversations by reminding us, even though we don't need reminders, lots of crazy things going on in the world. You could be doing anything else with your time, but you are deciding to spend this hour with us either live or by rewatching this video. So I do encourage participation if you're here live with us. You can do that in a couple of ways. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. I know that digital fatigue and camera fatigue is real these days, so no pressure there, but we believe in visibility here at Power to Fly. So I want to extend the invitation if you feel comfortable, turn your cameras on, participate that way. Otherwise, you can use the chat box. You can write any questions, reflections, any tips and tricks of your own. I'm going to sound like a broken record throughout the conversation, inviting you to write in the chat box or hop off mute because we do want you to maximize this time that you have with us here. If you hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. Again, so I like to say this, even though we don't need reminders, we live in a world where we are kings and queens of multitaskers, right? So I invite you to close some of those tabs, be present with us so that you can, take notes as Erika, our guest speaker, is dropping knowledge today. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately there and I'll raise your question or your reflection to our guest speaker. And the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And allow me to introduce myself briefly if this is your first time joining a Chat and Learn where I've moderated. Again, my name is Mariella Marie. I love speaking about the importance of deepening our emotional intelligence in the workplace, at home, and in our communities at large. So I might bring some of our reflections here. This might seem like a very technical conversation, but I believe we can bring in emotional intelligence anywhere we go. So feel free to philosophize with me there if you're interested. And I invite you all to support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org, sign up for our newsletter, or I'm happy to connect on LinkedIn as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Erika, who's calling from Los Angeles. Let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today, Erika.
Yeah. So I am Erika Klics. I am a job search strategist and a resume writer. I actually came from more than a decade of experience in the tech industry. I started out as an agency recruiter doing hundreds of cold calls every day, talking to mostly startups, Series A, Series B companies earlier in my career. I made the transition into in-house recruiting, primarily for technical roles. So I worked at Snapchat and then moved into more recruiting for all kinds of different roles, actually, at Zapier, at a tiny startup called Spot AI. And then most recently been contracting for a few different companies, as well as very much focusing on art of the resume, which is my company where I help job seekers in the tech industry, more so on the non-technical side, plenty of technical clients too, to really navigate through the job search process because it's stressful for all of us in different ways, whether it's finding the job, whether it's interviewing for the job, whether it's offer negotiation, we all struggle at different points. And as somebody who has seen it over and over and over again, I love to use that knowledge to help people kind of gain that just confidence that they can do this. There is an awesome job for them on the other side. And today we're going to chat about doing that between roles. So moving from one function to another, or one title to another. Or I know there's a few questions up on the list for different industries into the tech industry as well. So really excited to share all of that with you. There's one other thing you asked me about. Power to fly. Yeah. So I had learned about Power to Fly at Zapier. We were a partner for Power to Fly, and we've hired some amazing, they are still hiring amazing people, I believe, through the Power to Fly platform. But since Zapier, I've actually leveraged Power to Fly in a few different companies, and I share it out everywhere I go because I think it's a great resource, and one that really just resonates with my own mission of bringing people from all kinds of backgrounds into the tech industry and into success in the tech industry.
I love that. Great, Erika. Okay, so before we roll into the questions that folks have submitted previous to the conversation, can you remind us how we can get in touch with you when the conversation ends so that we can continue the conversation offline?
Yes, absolutely. There's 3 good places. You can always find me on LinkedIn. I am the only one named Erika Klics. If you spell it like it is spelled, that's me. I'm also on Instagram at Art of the Resume. It's Art of the Resume. When you switch it around, there's another company that is not me. So keep an eye out, Art of the Resume. And then also on my website, www.artoftheresu.me. Art of the Resume. I'm actually launching a new program tomorrow, the Job Search Roadmap, which is a monthly membership. So when you arrive at the Art of the Resume website, that little pop-up will appear. You could check it out.
Awesome. So please feel free to share more about that workshop as we go into some of these questions here. But just to set up the stage, and I know you spoke briefly about what you plan to cover, can you just talk about some of the principal themes for today's conversation?
Yeah. So there are so many paths within the tech industry. One of the things that I love most about the tech industry is the fact that it's almost like musical chairs. People are moving around. They're moving from job to job. There's constantly new opportunities, new companies sprouting up, new companies getting funding. And so I see the tech industry as just an open field of possibilities. That can be really overwhelming too, because you're like, okay, I'm in the tech industry. Where do I go from here? There's not necessarily a linear path. But there are some common transition paths within tech and some roles that kind of build on previous roles and kind of skills that set you up for the next thing. So we'll chat a little bit about what those common transition paths are. How do you leverage those skills that you have already to get that role that you want? And I saw some of the questions from the submissions that are very much aligned with this. But there are a lot of skills within the tech industry that are transferable across any role. And it's all about bringing a lens to the type of work that function is doing, to kind of point them to look at the skills that you already have. And then really how to position yourself for the new role that you want, how to use the language of the company that you're trying to get into, how to really take a look at where their focuses are, where their priorities are, and telling the stories of your own background through that lens.
Yes, storytelling is so important. So I love that you are highlighting this. And speaking of, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we roll into the questions that you all have submitted previous to the conversation. I would love to hear from our live callers, just so that our guest speaker can dive in super deep as it regards, where you are going, how you are transitioning, what you're pivoting into or not. So if you all, those of you who are interested in engaging, please write that in the chat box. Let us know, if you are transitioning from X to whatever, whether you are just simply interested and, here to get new information. There are no wrong answers. We just want to hear from you, and so that we can really maximize our time here today. So as you all are thinking of what to put in the chat box, we're going to start with this first question here. I should also mention, if you hear your question come up and you're here live with us, please let us know. And as we are discussing, if anything comes to mind, even if it's some of your own tips and tricks you have found useful, or something that you had a dream about last night that you want to share with the world, we want to hear from you. So please feel free to drop that in the chat box as well. All right, so Erika, let's start with this first question here. How does one manage moving from a tech manager leader role back into a developer IC role?
Yeah, so this is a great question because this happens a lot. When you're in a management role, people see you as a manager. And I think a lot of the best way to kind of set yourself up for that transition back is to really define your why. If you can tell your why, what happens is it builds trust with the hiring manager that this is actually something you want to do, because the hiring manager's biggest fear is that you move into an IC role and actually you don't want to do the work you want to be leading a team, or you're accustomed to the work that is associated with more of that leadership level role. So how do you give them the confidence that in fact the IC work is what you want to be doing? And so getting very clear on your why is probably the best way, because honestly, you're going to have to say it at every step of the interview process. They're going to ask you over and over again, like, why are you making this transition? Why do you want to do this? The other thing I would say would be to find those examples of your IC work in the role today. Because there are times when you actually may be doing hands-on coding. I'm not sure if the person who asked this question is on today, but if this is you, depending on the kind of percentage of your experience that is hands-on versus management, that'll make kind of a big difference in terms of how challenging it is for you to move back in. If you're doing 100% management, you haven't touched code in 2 years, it's going to be more challenging, and you'll have to find more examples and kind of even potentially do some project work and stuff outside of your role to show that your skills are up to par. That you're going to be ready to hit the ground running and jump back in. Then if you're doing 50% hands-on work today, then you might have an easier time because you have examples to show that you are in fact doing this work, and it might not be a huge change to go back. Yeah, I hope that's helpful in thinking about that transition and about what hiring managers are actually thinking about when they're looking at your experience and what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And if I can reflect a little bit on with yourself. And I think that how can I be clear with what I want to do, with how to move forward, and then how can I share that on the resume? Sounds pretty difficult, but just to make that space for yourself to get clarity so that you can demonstrate, I'm not moved by wanting to do something that I'm not explaining clearly here, because I've already sat with myself and I've reflected. So that self-awareness piece, any tips that you have on building self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the biggest things that I teach on, that my program is based on. It's so much about kind of starting at the very beginning of like, what do I want? How do I want to spend my day? Where are my strengths? Because it's where your strengths are and what you actually want to be doing. When those two things, it's like the Venn diagram, that stuff in the middle is what you should be doing and what you should be focusing on. And there are jobs out there that fit every overlap in the middle, I promise. But if you can get really clear on those things that you're good at and the things that you actually want to be doing, that's where, once you're able to articulate that to hiring teams, to hiring managers, you'll have such an easier time tackling your job search.
I love that you're highlighting that. So I see that folks are in the chat box. This is another invitation to write where you currently are. Are you applying for new work? Are you pivoting careers? Are you thinking about transitioning? Just let us know. You can write to me privately as well if you don't want to put it in the public chat. All right, for now, let's move on to this next question here. Can you share some thoughts about the changing dynamics of low code, no code, and how this upcoming revolution is altering tech skills such as syntax, development, and coding?
Yes, yeah, I can. So I'm not a technical person, but I use no code solutions in my job all the time. Because what no code and low code allows me to do is to do more work and to do deeper work. Because those kind of, I wouldn't call them surface, but those necessary processes are actually taken care of for me. I see this as a trend in every single function, honestly. And actually, I wrote an article about this in 2019. If you dig through my LinkedIn profile, you'll actually see an article on automation in the workplace. Maybe it was the beginning of 2020, right before the pandemic, I think, actually. But honestly, no code and automation gives individuals the opportunity to stretch themselves and explore deeper work, to explore more interesting work, to not have to wait on a development team, which tend to be already highly in demand and strapped in terms of resources to do this work. I also think it honestly gives software engineers, and I feel like I've heard whisperings of like, oh, is automation going to be the death of the software engineer? No, absolutely not. It's going to also allow engineers and those more technical people to do more interesting work and to expand on what's possible. I think automation and no code, low code is going to take us into a totally new direction once it's truly fully adopted. But for now, even if you are an accountant or you are a customer support engineer, or you're not a coder, you can utilize those tools to do more, to set up workflows, to set up processes, to make a more streamlined customer experience. And that is a skill that is going to be valuable no matter what you do.
I love the hopeful quality, the hopeful essence you're putting in that response.
I know robots are scary. I get it.
And not just that, I mean, this is, to your point, if people think that robots are scary, all the more reason to put emotional intelligence into creating technology, because that's something robots can't do. So you bring your emotional intelligence.
Well, and I think that's the other layer of it, is that technical skills are always going to be in demand, but it's those soft skills and about how those people skills, communication skills, they become so much more important in being able to share ideas, into connecting with other human beings, and like kind of making all of this high tech work basically.
I love it. Okay, great. Let's move on to this next question here. What future tech skills do you think will be most relevant and or could be leveraged across various tech platforms?
Well, that goes right with what we were just talking about. Because, and I'm not going to talk about learning Python or the next new language or the next new, coding platform, because honestly, they change every day. And if you're focused specifically on a technical skill or a flavor or a language, you will be left behind. So more than anything else, it is investing in those soft skills, in those people skills, in communication, in transparency. Here's one for you. We are all in this kind of new remote. I've been working remote for a long time. I think probably many people have. It's not like remote's totally new. But this is a new world where we're all remote. and we're all really learning learning a new way of communicating with one another. I think that is something that we'll have to continue to invest in, and to learn those skills and learn how to operate in this remote work environment, because this isn't going away, and these remote work environments are just going to get more complex. So how do we continue to do great work together, to communicate together, and to continue to move toward the same goal when we're not actually in the same space?
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I love this. Okay, we're just on question number 4 and we're already going deep here. So if anyone has any questions or reflections, feel free to use the chat box. I see I have a private message. I will raise your question in just a few moments. But for now, let's move on to this one here. Do you have any tips for a non-tech professional seeking career opportunities in the tech industry?
Yes. So there are all kinds of jobs in tech that do not require a software engineering degree, or honestly do not require technical skills. They require a lot of these things that we've just been talking about, these like soft skills, these communication skills, creative problem solving. Creative problem solving is necessary in every single role ever. And then, so a lot of when you talk about coming from the non-tech industry into the technical industry, my question back would be like, what do you do? Like, where are you coming from? If you're coming from, a marketing role in the food and beverage space, those same marketing skills are 100% applicable to tech. So it's about finding the crossover in what you do. There are roles, there's so many roles within tech right now, and we could talk about that coming up here, just how wild the market is at the moment. But it's honestly about finding your strengths and kind of like finding your way in.
I love that. Okay, so I'm going to flag a private question here. I'm doing a coding course and I'm trying to transition to web development front end. I'm currently working in marketing, operations, and support, so I have no real, quote, working experience. When I see vacancies, experience is required or asked. What advice or tips do you have for someone who wants to enter the tech world?
Yeah, so in a coding role, there's a few things. One is that software engineers, front-end engineers, JavaScript engineers, not sure which what your tech stack is, but they are in such high demand right now that a lot of times, if you see a job description that says it needs 5 years of experience, I'm not going to say they'll take an entry level person, but they'll probably take one with 3 or 4 years of experience. Like there's some wiggle room when it comes to job descriptions. So don't necessarily take the job description 100% at its word, because there's flexibility there. This is particularly true the earlier you go in terms of stage. And so this is my other advice to you. You may be hoping for a very established environment where there's a lot of mentorship in place to learn and grow. Those entry-level jobs tend to be more challenging to get. There's a longer process to go through. There's a really rigid process to go to. Those opportunities are out there. You should absolutely apply to them, go after them. I'm not saying don't go after them, but open your mind up to some of these earlier stage opportunities, even seed funded and Series A opportunities, because companies, particularly in this market, they are hungry for talent. And if you can bring your skills, see if you can bring your exposure to the work environment, if you've gone through a course, you have probably a better chance of making your way in at a smaller startup than, perhaps a more structured, bigger, large corporate environment. The other thing I will say there is, you're in a marketing operations role right now. Try to find opportunities to kind of inject your new skills that you're learning into your current role. If you can allude to the HTML or JavaScript widget that you built, and you can, share that on a job description, or point to that and say that that's like real industry experience you have because you've been in that role and you've actually done it for a company. That's going to give you a little bit more credit. That's going to go a little bit further than, the side projects. Side projects are awesome and they're necessary. But if you can find a way to weave it into your current role, that may be really effective.
I love that advice. I love that advice. It's about putting the pieces of the puzzle together first for yourself so that you can be more confident in presenting that. If, a hiring manager is looking at several resumes in a day, and I don't know how many minutes, I remember someone shared that information, how many minutes they actually look, and it's like, I spent all this time like going through a crisis and now the person has 1 minute or I don't know, 3 minutes to look at my resume. It can be very daunting. But I just love this first step of taking action for yourself, helping to connect those dots, and then presenting so that we can feel more confident. Also, I just want to throw in there, I love bringing this up whenever I can. So we do a lot of research here at Power to Fly, and one of the pieces of research that's really shocking to me that I always want to share whenever I can is that women are less likely to apply if they don't match 100% of the requirements that are listed in the job description. And I see you nodding your head, Erika. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, it kills me. So I don't know if Power to Fly has done its own research. The number I have seen is 70%. So, you know, males, tend to be more comfortable applying anywhere from like at 50% if they meet 50% of the qualifications, and women and other genders at 100%. And it's more so, from at least from my understanding, down to confidence, and expectations more than anything else. And so I always advocate to all of my clients to look at that 70% mark. 50% might be a little of a stretch. But 100%, nobody meets 100. No, that's not true. Not nobody. Very few people meet 100% of the qualifications. The one place where I'll say, or there are a few places where I'll say that this is maybe not as true is like the Googles and Facebooks of the world. They'll even tell candidates that their like stretch opportunities are usually more like mandatory requirements because they just get so many applications. But there's wiggle room for every role. And there's no one expects perfection in an interview. What interview teams are looking for is somebody who's going to be able to like handle the job. And depending on the level, that will be to a greater or lesser extent of what sort of knowledge they need coming into that role. They're looking for a great teammate, whatever that means to that company, because values vary from company to company. So however, they're looking for a great teammate, and they're looking for somebody that they can trust. They're looking for somebody that when it comes down to it, they'll come in, they'll step into the role, and they'll give it their all. That's what they're looking for. And if you can portray that, you don't need 100% of the qualifications. 70% will do.
I love that. Thank you for that encouragement, Erika. Okay, I knew you would love that bit of research I threw in there. Okay, so let's move on to this next question here. I'm transitioning from chemical engineering to a data science analyst role. Does 6 to 12 months sound reasonable to make the transition? Do you recommend any resources to help me conquer the learning curve or shorten my transition time?
Yeah, so it's interesting about timelines, because they are totally different from person to person. So really, that timeline is going to be very dependent on where you're coming from. You're in a chemical engineering role, which I can assume some of the skills that might be similar into a data science or a data analyst role, but I don't really know without taking I don't know if you guys hear this, if my mic is good enough to hear the sneezing in the background. No? Okay, good. So, but there are a few things that I would definitely think about in terms of like how you approach making that transition. The first one is informational interviews. Talk to people who do that job, learn from them, where they focus, how they got into it, what tools they use when they don't know where to go, or what questions when they have big questions, where do they go, and utilize those resources. Look at job descriptions. Look at job descriptions that interest you, and take a look at what skills you have, where you're able to lean in and find stories that really help depict those skills. versus the gaps. What don't you have yet, and focus on those things, because the job descriptions are going to tell you exactly what companies are looking for in that role. There are so many flavors of data scientist. So you'll want to get specific on what kind of data scientist you really want to be. Do you want to work in data science within a specific industry? Maybe you want to be in data science for the, I don't know, for health tech, or if you're looking at data science specifically for SaaS or marketing or whatever it is. It can be really hard to know that when you're just deciding, I want to move into data science, but I would absolutely go back to your why. Like figure out why data science, and that will help narrow down a little bit more in terms of the flavor. And then once you're looking at those job descriptions, they're also going to give you a really great, they're going to give you some clues as to what platforms to get familiar with, because just like there's all sorts of different types of data scientists, and from data analytics to data science, there's a spectrum. They're all utilizing different tools, and you cannot possibly learn them all. It's not possible. So don't do it. Rather than trying to get a survey of every tool, take that time, take that 6 to 12 months to get really good on a few tools that you're seeing as common denominators between all these job descriptions that interest you. Because having depth of experience tends to be far more value than having breadth of experience.
Absolutely. Getting more committed, right? And less superficial, right? So I think this also comes back to what you said in the beginning. What is your why? Get clear on that. Is it just for the money? Is it just for the title?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it deeper? And if it's deeper, then you already have some depth there. And how do you show that on your resume or in an interview? So I love that you're highlighting that. All right, let's move on to this next question here. Which positions are a more seamless pivot for someone currently in a technical sales role? What are the best skills to highlight when pursuing a support or customer success role? I love everyone. Like, it's like you have the key of well, of course, you're going to share whatever you need to share, and however that comes out, there are no wrong responses. But there, it's like time comes up in a lot of these questions. Like, what's the shortest amount of time? Or like, how can I get it now? Take this pill.
Yeah. I mean, the key is always, to me, it's always focus, because you could have, if you're not focused, if you're not like so clear on why I am the person for this job, and this is the job that I want, how on earth is a hiring manager going to know that you are the person for this job? It's like you're putting, like, I've had some clients where they're like, I want this job, or maybe this one over here, or this one over here. And you know what their resume looks like? It looks like a mishmash of all of those things. And it is incredibly hard to say, oh yes, they're going to be great for my role, because they don't even know that they're great for my role. So, but specific to this question, technical sales, the biggest one, honestly, that jumps out to me from technical sales is into product. And the reason is that being on a technical sales team, you are on the front line with customers. You are really figuring out what their issues are and figuring out how to solve them. So you're hearing the feedback, you're hearing what features that they wish that they had. And that is like the key to being a great product manager. And I've seen quite a few people make that transition from technical sales into product management. That the question asker actually talked about customer support and customer success, which are also very like common transition paths for sure. When it comes to support, and this is actually true for every role ever, but I think it's especially true for support, is customer empathy, really figuring out how to put yourself in the shoes of the customer and think about the problems that they're experiencing, and the patients, and figuring out how to solve them. So technical sales into customer support makes a lot of sense. And if you're thinking about the ways of depicting that, of demonstrating that you have that, I would go straight to your experiences with customers where they had challenges getting set up, or challenges coming onto your product, or challenges understanding a certain feature and how to use it, or how it works within the product. Those are very similar challenges to those you might be facing in customer support. So you'll have stories to pull from. And then on the customer success side, it's the same. It's really the same thing, but it's about answering a lot more on giving them a next step, like helping them kind of through the process of how they actually utilize the product that you're selling. So there should be examples there too when it comes to technical sales of how you're giving your customer that next step, how you're getting them from, the trial, a free trial, and figuring out those features into actually signing on the dotted line, and kind of like showing them the path. So it's more like being a shepherd. Hopefully that's helpful.
I love that. I love your suggestions. Very encouraging. Again, you're piecing the puzzle together, seeing that there are also, different routes as well. And I love that you're able to bring this from your experience that you've seen, a certain way that, someone can pivot into product management, let's say from this experience. So as far as, doing that with showing it on your resume, it seems like taking that step back again, like you said in the beginning of this conversation, having that self-awareness, getting that clarity, and then trying to find a way to show that with your resume so that you can. I'm one of those people. I sympathize with with this example that you gave with like I can do this and this and this. I am that kind of creative person where it's like, okay, show me what you got, give me X amount of time, these resources, and I can do what you need. But then over time, I had to get more specific, obviously for myself, because otherwise I can do all of the things and have no time for myself, and all of, have those boundaries really be challenged. So just to have that clarity within myself, okay, what do I enjoy doing? And what is my purpose, my mission? How do I want to use my talents in order to, achieve this mission? If I want to, feed the activist in me, how can I do that with the work that I do, instead of saying I can do all of the things? Well, which one is going to be the path to help me, reaffirm that purpose? So, I mean, this sounds, maybe more on the emotional intelligence side, but I think again, the bridges with the technical side, being aware of what you need in order to be your best self. You're also speaking a lot about empathy and inclusion and diversity, and seeing that from, if you're going to be working with customers, how can you empathize with, okay, this travesty just happened in the world. How can I empathize instead of just thinking about the dollar or thinking about my time or thinking about what I want to do when I finish this call? So I love that you're bringing that to the conversation as well. All right, let's move on to the next question here. What are the more common entry points to tech in the first place? Are there any overlooked areas or positions that might be more available despite the surge of people transitioning into tech?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because there is an absolute surge, but also, like I was talking about before, there is a surge of new jobs in tech, and new titles popping up. There's kind of like new roles and new ways of like fitting into tech. An example of that would be product marketing. Product marketing was not a thing, like, I don't know, a handful, like 5 or 6 years ago. It's like a new function, and now it's a core function now. So many tech companies operate. But I would also kind of call back to something that we said earlier in terms of bringing your own skills to the table when it comes to coming into tech. A few of the roles that I see as being kind of entry points, customer support is one, because there are products that are much more technical in nature than others. And so, bringing up the people skills from any industry. And I see a lot of teachers actually move into customer support and customer success roles, which I think is kind of a cool transition. The same thing with like L&D and trainers from other industries into tech, because they bring valuable communication skills and valuable skills that tech, I think, kind of desperately needs. There are, marketing, every content writing. Oh my goodness, there's so much content that needs to be written. So coming from any industry into content writing, that's a common one. And then there are the boot camps. There are, easy and accessible ways to learn a skill if that's a skill that you truly enjoy. The one thing I will caution is, and I've seen a lot of people do this, they decide that they want to be a software engineer because it pays really well. And so they go through the boot camp, but writing code is not something they actually enjoy doing. It's just something that pays the bills. And I will counter that there are some amazing paying jobs in tech that require zero knowledge of how to code. So if that's like, it's not the only path in. I 100% promise you, there's other paths in besides coding.
So I just want to take a moment to ask you a little bit about what you offer. You have this workshop coming up, and it's clear that you enjoy what you do, and you're bringing some of these stories and experiences into the conversation now. So I would just love to hear some of your most memorable moments, or of course without name dropping, but anything you'd like to share regarding the way that you work with folks to just understand the way that they can present themselves better.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been talking a lot about this, about confidence and for me, the kind of core of everything that I work with clients on one-on-one is focused on getting very clear on what you want out of your next role, and then finding the fit for you. And so that is different from person to person, but there's a really clear process that I think everybody goes through. One of the things at the beginning is getting clear on what that fit is, finding those jobs, because I love LinkedIn, but they're not all on LinkedIn. And there's many on Power to Fly. We've used Power to Fly to post some really cool roles in the past. And then, finding the stories that you want to tell that fit your experience and your skill set. And then there's kind of the end part, which I think intimidates a lot of people, which is the offer negotiation piece. So lots of skills there to help support as you go through. My goal with clients is to have not one, but multiple offers to be able to choose from. So they have like choice when it comes to the end of the process. But you asked about a story, and I think one that comes to mind is a recent client, because we're talking a little bit about timelines and the differences in timelines, and how do we get to this really fast. So I have a client who had a client. He has a job now. He's an account executive at a tech company. And he wound up taking a role. He decided, okay, I'm gonna job search. I'm gonna just kind of throw it out to the universe that I'm job searching and see what comes my way. And he wound up, I think he wound up putting it on LinkedIn and just saying like, hey, and he had a ton of inbound interest because he's got experience. He's in a space that, that is growing. And he wound up taking a job without really getting clear at the beginning of what he wanted to do next. He just knew he wanted to do something different. He was running away from instead of going toward something. And he lasted there 3 months. And after the 3 months, he was done. They were done. It just wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good culture fit. It wasn't a good work style fit. It didn't work. So before he wound up ultimately leaving, he actually booked a session with me. And he had one question in the session. It was like, I have another offer that I could take right now. Do I need to take it? And my answer was like a resounding no. This was not the offer for him. He was doing the same thing over again. He just had an offer come to him and he wasn't getting clear on what he wanted. And so he put the brakes on. We had that session in the beginning or the end of July. And he emailed me just a couple of days ago that he has an offer now because he did the work. He took a step back. Yeah, I was really, really proud of him for like getting clear on what he wanted and taking the time to apply. He did the outbound messaging. He went after it himself. But it was that difference because if he had just taken that extra offer, he would have gone to what I think was probably more like a call center. He would have gone down a spiral. And he would have there would be a point where, and I've seen this happen, people end up like hating their jobs or hating their careers or thinking like, oh, this career is not for me. It's like, sometimes it takes a moment of pause to get clear on the things that you love and the things that you don't, because there is an opportunity out there for everyone. There's not a perfect job. There's no perfect jobs, but there's some that are going to be a better fit than others.
And I know that folks who are listening now, I mean, we all, either it's ourselves or we know someone who like takes the next thing that knocks on the door, and it's like, oh, but don't go into that. I'm gonna hear you a month later telling me why, all of the reasons why not.
I've done
And
it.
I
I've done it too. Like,
we
yeah.
do that, right? We need these wake up calls, or that support to say, actually, throw it out to the universe for sure, but don't just take whatever comes back, because then it's, this loop effect that happens. We go spiraling down, or we fall out of love with what we do, versus, intentionally putting ourselves out there. That might mean for a lot of people scheduling time to be on these, like, to be doing these networking events, like the folks who are here right now. You are
Mhm.
here because you decided, like, it takes some intentionality, and then saying no, the power of no.
Mm.
Someone once said, that I interviewed, I love this: no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
You can say thank you as well if you'd like, but no, put those boundaries, and just to avoid, another spiral of like, oh, what am I doing? Another, midlife, early life, end of life crisis, all any way you want to look at it.
Mhm.
Okay, so speaking of money, I love that we've got about a little over 10 minutes left. So I do want to talk a little bit about, that end piece that you said is pretty, I don't even know the word for it, but it makes us go like, ah, how do I do
Yeah.
this? How do I sell myself? Or how do I, present that I need X amount of money to feel valued? This question rings to that. How can I best approach conversations around experience level and salary? And for this particular person, writes, I'm currently in a senior position, but I'm looking at a wide array. And I would love for you to just open this, to anyone who maybe they aren't in senior positions, but just how to approach best the conversations around experience level and salary.
Yeah, because it's hard. Because the truth is that level is defined very differently from company to company. There was one company where I worked where leveling was like really clear. There was like numbered levels, and there was 5 levels from entry level to like VP level. And then there's another company where there was 10 levels, and like, okay, so how does this 5 relate? Like, what number am I? How does it how does it work? So I really think when you're thinking about leveling, I would try to take a survey of the market. There's a number of different tools out there. One I would probably actually try to avoid, which is the one you would probably think to go to first, would be Glassdoor, because Glassdoor's salary information is all self-reported. And so they're defining their own level. Titles may match, but level may be a lot different. Whereas some of the kind of more HR specific tools, things like salary.com, PayScale. PayScale is actually, I think it's PayScale. Yeah, PayScale is actually the most accurate one that I've seen in terms of the companies that I've looked at for later stage. That seems to be a really good place to look. So once you're moving into a new role, taking a look at what are the expectations around level for that position, because your level may be what they need, but it may not be what they have budgeted. And so you have to think about, okay, if this job description is asking for 3+ years of experience, they have an expectation around what they're going to pay that person. If you have 10+ years of experience, there may be some wiggle room, but they're not always going to be able to adapt based on your level. They may not be able to match. And so it's really kind of a delicate dance of figuring out what's going to be the right fit for you, and what you actually need in order to, to live and to live a lifestyle that you want to live, versus what are they able to pay. And being my biggest tip across anything else is being transparent upfront. This is like salary negotiation. There's lots of advice about like hold back what you want. It's like that is such a recipe for getting to the end of the process and like setting yourself up for disappointment. So
I mean, I find it
yeah.
I love that your advice is that, because historically speaking, let's say there has not been much inclusion in the workplace. So if we are approaching salary negotiation in a different way, it's because we are asking to have different voices be heard. We're asking for diversity of thought, culture, gender, all of these things. And so we have to negotiate differently. We have to. You speak about pay equity. Pay equity didn't exist a century ago. It's unfortunately it still doesn't exist in lots of places. So just to piggyback on what Erika is saying, transparency. I would love if during these like informational interviews, like if some transparency for pay equity can be shared freely without like thinking someone's going to take your job. Like Erika mentioned, there's so many new roles opening up. This is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger. And so for me, it's pointless to try to hold like to bite that number, especially if you want to send the elevator back down, leave the door open, all of these images that we have of making space at the table or starting your own table. It comes with transparency, and pay equity is key. So please start having these conversations with people, especially if, let's say, if you're leaving or transitioning from one role to another, freely give that information if you feel comfortable to other people so that you'll be, leaving the door open, sending the elevator back down, and people don't have to guess and try to, go up to all of these websites and say like, what do I do now? This like all of these websites are saying all of these different numbers, but I feel like this, and I don't even know how to have this conversation. It's such a touchy topic. So, Erika, would you like to say anything else? I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts on this. Because the one thing I'll say is like, I often hear, I was on having a LinkedIn conversation the other day with somebody who was like, well, if companies aren't being transparent about their salary, then, it's automatically intentional that they're trying to hide something, or they're trying to get a bargain, or they're trying not to pay you a good salary. That's not necessarily true. Some of these companies just have no idea what they want. And particularly when like they just don't know. And so until they start interviewing, until they start learning like, oh, that's what 150K looks like. Okay, we can pay that. Like, but unless they know at the very beginning that like, this is what I want, this is what I deserve, and I'm going to ask for it, they're going to kind of keep like kind of like pushing stuff to the side and dealing with the money later, because they don't know. It's not the right thing. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's like the truth, particularly these earlier stage companies. As companies get larger, more structured, they have more structure to their levels, and then I think they absolutely should be transparent. And when it comes to pay equity, and I think kind of advancing diversity in the workplace, I especially think it's important when somebody is above the range to share that, because you deserve what you're worth. And if they don't know, then they're never going, like, then their expectations are going to stay where they are. They've level set at a certain point, and it's not great that it's on the candidate to do this, but the more we can do to level set expectations and like open companies' eyes to the fact that like, this is what it costs to hire great talent, no matter what background you come from, I think it's important to do.
And also, I mean, I love the transparency piece there. I've been in situations where I've gone through interviews, I've done tests that are not paid.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't get a callback, or we changed directions. And I make a point to write back and say, all good, but this is probably when a paid test should be required, because if we are at the, whim of, I don't know, maybe this works or not, and I'm going to ask you for your time just the same, that's not really respectful of someone else's time. So, I mean, I know that paid tests are another conversation, but just my point is, I love the integrity of sharing feedback after the process, whether you get the job or not, especially if there is room to be more, equitable, to say, hey, in the future, you might want to consider this, because otherwise it doesn't really add value to the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm a huge proponent of feedback at every step of the process. Not everybody will hear it, but somebody might make a change,
A drop in the pond. It
Yeah,
adds a ripple
there you
somewhere.
go.
All right, so we've got about 5 minutes. This has been such a great conversation. Let's try to touch on at least one or two more. If anyone has any live questions here, would love to hear from you. So just drop that in the chat box. And in the meantime, I'll go into this question here. Should I inform my current manager that I am changing my career path to product management? Is there a way to do this without affecting my current role?
So whew, that's a loaded one because it depends on your manager more than anything else. I have always been in supportive environments. So my experience and the experience that I have seen of many of my clients is that we're just talking about transparency. The more transparent you are about your own goals, your career goals, the more you'll find you'll have support from different teams. I had an amazing experience actually of having I was managing a team and had two members of my team who came to me and saying, like, I don't want to be in recruiting anymore, or eventually I don't want to be in recruiting. I want to do this instead. And we were actually able to set up like shared programs where that person was doing their job 75% of the time, the thing on their job description, and 25% of the time, we basically like rented them out to this new department so that they were able to get experience. So if you've built the trust with your manager, I think it's in your best interest to share and find ways and see if there are opportunities for you to learn the skills that you're going toward in product management, either within your role or to get exposure to other people on your team, or, maybe even potentially get, open to your manager's network connections of people who might be in that space. Like, the more you share, I think the more opportunities is available to you.
Absolutely. I love that. All right. So leave us with some food for thought. We've just got a couple moments left here. You've dropped so much knowledge already, and remind us of what you have coming up as well, so that we can go to your website or follow you on socials and just continue the conversation there. So leave us with some food for thought. What can we start doing when this conversation ends right now? And then how can we connect with you?
Yeah. So I think one thing that we didn't even get a chance to touch on is this idea of like using the language of these companies that you want, because this will be rude to say, but like hiring teams are kind of lazy. They don't bring imagination to the hiring process. And so the clearer that you can make it for them to see you as a strong alignment with the role that they're hiring for, the easier time you're going to have making that transition into whatever that transition is going to be. And so one of the easiest ways that I have seen to do this is to use their language. Look at the job description, look at their website. If you have access to their product, dive into their product and use the words that they use. I mean, don't use words that you aren't, but take signals. That would be kind of the biggest thing that I would share that can kind of help you in your resume, in your interviews, in like all the way through. It will come in handy. And then when it comes to finding me, again, my LinkedIn, Erika Klics, my company is Art of the Resume. And then my membership, which I'm so excited to launch tomorrow, it's a complete job set like toolbox for you. So there's on-demand one-on-one coaching. So you get to work with me. There's a group aspect. It's all built on Slack. So nerding out, it's all built in Slack. There's a course to follow. There's templates. There's resume templates. There's all kinds of templates. And that launches tomorrow. You could check it out anywhere that I exist on the internet. You'll probably be able to find it. It's called the Job Search Roadmap.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so if you all have joined us live, you will get a rewatch email with all of the resources that Erika has mentioned throughout this conversation that she wants to include, including the link to that membership that you were speaking about. How fun. Congratulations. It is clear that you enjoy the work that you do, and also to hear these success stories, really motivates me to send people your way. So if you're listening, definitely recommend connecting with Erika and just diving in on all the things that she has to offer. Thank you everyone for joining this conversation. Good luck in your job search. Remember to bring your best selves, your authentic selves, and let's continue to build community online while we have the chance to do so. Erika, thank you so much again. We'll see you on the next chat.